This is the comparison we've all been waiting for in 2024. In front of me, I have Aprilia's RS457 going head-to-head with the Ninja 500 SE. Both of these motorcycles are vying to become king of the castle, the best beginner sport bike that money can buy. But only one of them can leave this video as the winner. So we're gonna look at the detailed specifications, the ergonomics, get both of these bikes out on the road back-to-back, come back here in the studio, and I'm gonna tell you which one you should buy. And I'll also give you my personal opinion on which bike I think is best. Now, this Aprilia RS457 is a giveaway bike on YamiNoob.co. Make sure you get your chances locked and loaded, because October 4th is your last chance to win this motorcycle. And this Ninja 500 SE over here, well, it was bestowed upon me by the motorcycle gods. It couldn't possibly be another giveaway bike that's gonna launch just a few days after this one. No, that cannot be possible, right? Maybe you should become a member on YamiNoob.co and you can find out all the behind the scenes dirt on what we're doing with these motorcycles. Now, let's take a look at the detailed specs on both of these machines. Let's talk about the Ninja 500 first. This is an evolution on the Ninja 400 platform, so it shares a lot of the same bones. The chassis is basically the same, the suspension's the same, geometry is largely the same, but the motor is a teensy bit different. It's using a larger stroked out 451cc version of the old 399cc engine. The Kawasaki is now cross-platforming across several different models. But ultimately, you can think of this motorcycle as a slight evolution on the 400 platform, which is no bad thing. I'm a very, very big fan of the 400s. As you guys know, I've owned many of them, raced them, really enjoyed those motorcycles. The Aprilia, on the other hand, is brand spanking new. It features a new frame, an aluminum twin spar frame, I may add, a brand new 457cc parallel twin with a 270-degree crank, and overall, this motorcycle is really gunning for something totally new and different. This is not an evolution on any previous model, it's a brand new bike. In terms of pricing, both of these machines are actually very, very close. The Ninja 500 SE in the 40th anniversary livery actually comes in at $6,599. But the Ninja 500 as a platform can be had for as little as $52.99 if you get a base model with no ABS and no TFT and all the fancy stuff you get on the SE model. The Aprilia comes in at a teensy bit more at $67.99 MSRP, and you can spec in an extra $100 to get the cool livery that kind of looks like the RSGP MotoGP race bike. Now, in terms of power, both of these machines are very close as well. This motorcycle, the Ninja 500 SE, makes 51 horsepower at 10,000 RPM and 32 foot-pounds of torque at 7,500 RPM. The Aprilia RS457 makes a perfectly compliant 48 horsepower for A2 markets and also 32 foot-pounds of torque. The wet weights are remarkably similar for both of these machines as well. The Kawasaki Ninja 500 SE, according to internet research that I did, weighs about 380 pounds ready to ride, whereas the Aprilia weighs about 383 pounds ready to ride as well. Now, weight isn't always everything. When we swing a leg over these machines and do a proper ergonomics check, I'll tell you guys a little bit about how they feel when you're actually inside of the motorcycle, sitting in it, and really seeing how it feels. So beginner bikes are creeping up in price. What do you get for that money? On the SE package over here, it's actually quite a bit. You get a taller windshield that's gonna help disperse air a little bit better. You get a TFT display, keyless ignition, a seat cowl that you can put over the passenger pillion. You also get a radiator guard and some frame sliders as well. But that's where the RS457 is kind of differentiating from the old guard Japanese parallel twin motorcycles. This bike features a ride-by-wire throttle because it has traction control and ride modes, which is pretty unheard of in the beginner bike category. You also get a TFT display, you do get a keyed ignition, you don't get the seat cowl, you don't get frame sliders, you don't get a taller windscreen, because this motorcycle is going for the track-ready kind of vibe as opposed to the Ninja 500's all-rounder kind of vibe. Seat height is a little more approachable on the Ninja 500 at 30.9 inches versus the 31.5 inches on the RS457. Again, a little bit more racy. Fuel capacity is also very similar. The Ninja 500 has a 3.7 gallon tank, and in my testing, you can get about 170 miles to a tank, whereas the Aprilia RS457 has a 3.4 gallon tank, and you should see about 150 miles depending on how you're riding it. Suspension on both motorcycles are remarkably similar as well. The Aprilia's is a slightly up-spec inverted unit, 41 millimeters in diameter with preload adjustment at the front, versus the Ninja 500 over here has a normal non-inverted front fork with no preload adjuster at the front. Both motorcycles utilize a monoshock at the rear with only preload adjustability. The Ninja 500 has a linkage style suspension where the RS457 has it bolted directly to the swing arm, similar to the RS660's design. As mentioned, one of the critical differences between these two motorcycles is the fact that the RS457 uses an aluminum twin spar frame, which is completely unheard of in the beginner sport bike category and makes a massive difference in the way that it handles and feels. The Ninja 500 is using the same Ninja 400 tubular steel frame, and it feels pretty good, but when you feel this, it's just a world apart. So for pros and cons, a couple pros is the fact that the Ninja 500 is a known quantity. It has ultra reliable Japanese build quality and reliability, and you know exactly what you're gonna get. But that also is part of the cons. With a 180-degree crank 451cc motor, it's a little bit boring when you compare it to some of the new kids on the block. The Aprilia RS457's pros is the fact that it's very exciting to ride. It's super interesting, it's brand new, it's got a 270 crank motor, aluminum twin spar frame, it's ultra racy and sophisticated. The downside is that because it's a brand new platform and built in India, quality could be a little suspect. We don't really know about the reliability long-term about the RS457s, but I would rather say that if it's going to be built and used in India, it's probably gonna have to be pretty darn reliable. I've ridden in India, and it's nuts over there.
There's a cow in the middle of the street, folks.
Let's swing a leg over each of these machines and get a quick ergonomics check. Sitting on the 457, you notice it's a very sporty motorcycle. The handlebars are nice and wide, giving you lots of leverage to tip the bike over. You have a nice look out of the cockpit here with the triple tree and the bars slightly raised. You guys can see when I sit nice and neutral on this motorcycle, I have a slight bend in my back, but nothing too crazy. You're not in the pocket of a super sport kind of like this. But strangely enough, much like the RS660, it kind of plays double duty, and that you can definitely get in the pocket, ride this motorcycle like a real sport bike, and have a lot of fun with it. You have these nice cutouts in the gas tank that allow you to properly get in the pocket and attack with this motorcycle like you would with a real sport bike. The pegs are a little higher than you would anticipate on a bike like this, but again, it's designed for lots of ground clearance and the ability to ride fast on track. Now at 5'11" with a 32-inch inseam, I find myself being able to flat foot this motorcycle relatively easily. You guys see I have a pretty comfortable bend in my leg, even though the bike is slightly raised up with this stand. I would say even this motorcycle with a 31.5-inch seat height, I think riders at 5'5" could easily ride this motorcycle, but it really depends on your inseam. It's a very narrow motorcycle through the crotch here, and so that allows you to be able to stand over this motorcycle, tip it over to one side relatively easily. Now sitting atop the Ninja 500 SE, we notice that the shape of the gas tank immediately is not quite as sporty as the RS457. The seating position is a little bit more relaxed, not too much. You're a little bit more upright than you would be on the RS457. You really notice that lower seat height in relation to the pegs as well too. You guys can see that my butt and my feet are all a little bit lower because this motorcycle is really designed for a lot of different kinds of people to ride it. Sitting on the bike here, the look out of the dash doesn't quite feel as sophisticated as the RS457, but you have similar bar risers off of the triple clamp here, and overall it's a very similar execution as the RS457, just the sportiness all dialed back a little bit. You guys will see my stand over on this motorcycle. I have a much more pronounced bend in my leg than the other bike due to the fact that the seat height is about 0.6 inches lower on this motorcycle. You guys can see that at 5'11", 32-inch inseam, I can stand and the seat still is far away from me here. You're very comfortable on this bike, but I do feel a little bit cramped, I'm not gonna lie. My right foot is also encountering the exhaust here a little bit. That's a teensy bit annoying, but not a huge deal to me. And it's a comfortable place to sit. You know, it's very similar to a GSX 8R or a more sport touring oriented motorcycle. And it's actually quite comfortable. I wouldn't mind spending a long day in the saddle on this bike. Now, let's get the Ninja 500 out on the road and let's start riding.
Okay, when you swing a leg over the 500 versus the RS457, the Ninja 500 is just like more normal. It's more kind of traditional of what the kind of baby sport bike category has been for the last, what, 20 years, 15 years, something like that. Like you pull away with the Ninja, the rider triangle is relatively compact. It's quite a small motorcycle, and you kind of feel like you're in a bit of a blast of the past, right? The RS457, the CF Moto even to some extent, they kind of feel like the next generation, whereas the Ninja 500 kind of feels like that old reliable, you know? If you've ridden these old parallel twin Japanese bikes, they just have such like a feeling of worn-in boots, you know? Just this classic little inline or parallel twin whale. and it still works really well. I mean, you can't fault the Ninja 500. It still works really, really well, like exactly the way it should. And maybe it's because I have so much familiarity with this chassis, having raced it, but I just feel so confident with it, like supremely confident. Even if it's not doing it in the most fun way, I still feel like I have tons of grip, tons of flavor, tons of character out of this chassis. Now the engine's letting me down a little bit. This 451cc stroker motor just ends up feeling a little boring, a little regular, a little pedestrian, right? And it has equal amounts of torque as the 457 motor in the Aprilia, but what it does better than the Aprilia is it doesn't have a kind of kinked power band. It doesn't have a dip in the rev range. Kawasaki's managed to make this very linear, very smooth, very easy going. And where I think the 500 wins out over the 457 is that this is a much more complete all-round package. You know, I got a USB C input over here for power. I could easily wire up a rock form mount or something to put my phone right here. I got a taller windshield that disperses air a little bit better. I'm missing cruise control, but with the cable actuated throttle and a much simpler setup here, you can just put a simple throttle lock or an Atlas lock over here and that would work just fine. Cable actuated clutch feels really nice, super light pull. This is still the friendly, everyday usable beginner bike that it's always been. It's just become a little bit more well-rounded, whereas the RS457, it really is that sharp, focused, you know, track-ready version of itself. And that's what the design brief was on that bike, right? They wanted it to be a very track-oriented bike, whereas the Ninja 500, it can still boogie on a racetrack, but it can do so much more for so many more people. I really think the Ninja 500 will satisfy a lot of different kinds of riders. As we flick over here to the twistier part of this route, let's go have some fun. Let's see how this thing does, huh? Braking feel is not quite as good as the RS457. This doesn't have a radial mounted brake caliper, and the master cylinder feel is okay. It's got really nice pickup from the mid-range though. Doesn't feel quite as sporty, but still good. Down this hill here, keep it pinned, grab fifth. Yeah man, it works pretty good. Trail it in, take it easy. I have nice modulation over those brakes. You guys see there, I held the brakes a little longer. I wanted to see what it would do. The pad compound on the Ninja 500 is superior stock for stock to the RS457. When you pull on the lever, the feeling is okay, but then when you ask for more, you really feel it stopping, and you have really nice control over what the brake is doing, despite it not being a radial mounted brake caliper. It's funny, sometimes the hardware can be better on a different motorcycle, but something else along the chain of the braking component is superior, making it better for different reasons, right? Now, the Ninja 500 has a very long and slightly sloppy throttle throw. That's very common with entry-level Japanese machines. The R3 suffers from this as well, and the stock Ninja 400 also suffered from it. I think because they try to design it for entry-level riders, the throttle throw is just incredibly long. It's like 180 degrees of throw to get it to wide open. And honestly, for example, the R3 was so bad that you had to quite literally double grab it to go wide open. You'd have to grab it once and then keep turning it to go wide open, but the 500's not so bad. TFT display is really nice and legible. Kawasaki's is one of my favorite, honestly. The RS457 has a really nice display as well, but I just feel like the information is so crystal clear and easy to read on the Kawasaki, and you know, that black background, white text, it just makes it really simple to look at, really easy to read, and really nice to use too on the day-to-day. I do wish there were buttons to access it from here and not just on the dash up there. We'll grab second gear here. See how she does, nice and easy. Picks it up real good. Yeah, I wish the dash was a little bit easier to access from the handlebar, but I'm glad it doesn't have traction control. I'm glad it doesn't have rider modes, electronic throttle. It's simple, it's honest, and Kawasaki didn't reinvent the wheel with this bike, making it, you know, way too complicated. They gave people what they really want, right? USB connection, all-day riding capabilities, and still plenty of sporting character that's basically made the Ninja 650 kind of pointless in my opinion. I always preferred the Ninja 400 over the 650, and this 500 is just that slight evolution. You have enough torque now. I don't see why you'd buy a Ninja 650. Honestly, this has plenty of power, plenty of fun, and the 650 is just a really old architecture. We're gonna wait for this car to pass, and then we're gonna do a little 0 to 60 test, and we'll compare and contrast between the RS457 and this motorcycle to see which one is a little quicker. Check our 6, we're good, get our revs up. So we'll see how they compare 0 to 60. Decent launch on my end. Not the greatest race launch ever, but you know, we're on street, we're just having some fun. What I like about the 500 is that it's still super fun, and it still feels like a little bike that you can throw around and have a ton of fun with. The chassis being the same as the old Ninja 500 or the 400, it still feels really dialed in. It's really nice. That really, to me, speaks to how much the 400 was ahead of its time. I really think the Ninja 400, with the way that frame was designed and how fun it was to ride, it was so ahead of its time when it came out. And that's why it set the tone for the beginner bike category for like 7 years, until people really started catching up to where now, you know, the RS457, the CF Moto, those bikes have definitely caught up to where the 400 was, and this 500 has plenty of torque to have some fun now. So now let's jump on the RS457 and see how they compare back to back. Swinging a leg over the RS457, a bike we already have experience with, and it's immediately apparent that this is a different kind of motorcycle than the Ninja 500. As soon as you sit on it, the kind of sophistication you get from the cockpit here, everything's black and silver, and you see the aluminum twin spar frame right here. The bars are much wider. It's just the sporty option, you know? Seat height's a teensy bit taller. You pull away with that velvety 270-degree parallel twin, which, yeah, it's hard to deny that this is not a better engine than what's in the Ninja 500. Even though the Ninja 500 does make a teensy bit more peak horsepower, this thing just feels so good when you pull away. All that big bike presence, all that flavor. Hard on it, and just right away, this, man, man, the RS is so good. It's funny how a few years ago, when we didn't have a motorcycle like this in the category, we had to take the Ninja 400 for its word, right? We had to say, oh, that's definitely the category leader, you know? But then, man, you ride a bike with a real frame and just that extra oomph of just dialed in for sport bike stuff. Oh my God, it's so good. And you guys know, all my videos I've made with the RS457, it always puts a smile on my face. It is so put together. It's so fun to ride. And if you're just looking for smiles, you're not looking for like the best option for all around town riding and something you can whatever, like, this is the emotional purchase. This is the one you buy when you just want a motorcycle to make you happy. And is that not what we're looking for in motorcycling? Don't we just want to get on something that makes us smile, that makes us giggle, that makes us laugh, right? Is that not what motorcycling is for, right? All of the components here feel better than the Ninja 500. The handling is just, it's so good out of the box, man. And yes, you can make a Ninja 500 handle better, but this frame is just something else. In this category, this is just something else. This bike behaves like a real sport bike. And when you step up to an RS660, or let's say you go for a ZX6 or whatever, like you get another real deal sport bike, it's not going to feel a million miles off of what this bike does. The power characteristics will be different. Unless you go for the RS660, then you'll be surprised at how similar that is versus this motorcycle. Man, it's so sweet. The stopping power is awesome. You just feel like this bike's limits are way higher than what the street will allow you to do. You can really ride the absolute wheels off this thing, you know? If you really know what you're doing, you take an RS457 and you can just rip this thing around. But you gotta keep it on the boil because it has that slightly kinked power band that I told you guys about in my first ride and review of this thing. It's designed to be ridden high up in the RPM range, you know, because you have quite a noticeable dip in power in the middle. That's due to noise regulations, emissions, all kinds of stuff. But this motorcycle has excellent power up top. It really pulls very nicely to the top of the rev range. Yeah, that's sweet, man. You just feel like a superhero. You really want to ride this thing fast. Super enjoyable. Really crispy to grab a downshift. You can option in a quick shifter on this machine, which you should. Hit the RPM limiter there a little bit. You notice the gearing's a little different than the Ninja 500. We were able to get second gear wide open through these corners here, but not on the RS. It's geared a little more tight. Man, you could just ride this bike so fast. You can ride this bike so fast. And it's so exciting. It's so exciting that a little bike can make you feel this way. And I just love it. I love this motorcycle. It's so much fun to ride, and it just puts a big smile on my face. And yes, I know it's probably not going to be reliable and as simple as the Kawasaki. But honestly, Aprilia's not that bad. It's not a Ducati. It's relatively straightforward. And the fact that this is an Indian-built bike, you know, those motorcycles have to last a long time out there. They have to be proven reliable out there in India. And this motorcycle is probably going to be abused and used out in India, and I'd wager that it's relatively simple to care for and to do stuff with this bike. You know, it's a relatively straightforward architecture, right? It's got, you know, bucket over shim valves. You know, you just get in there. It's a parallel twin. Both the cylinders are, you know, in the same spot. Of course, servicing a Aprilia is always going to be a little more complicated than a Japanese bike, but I really feel like you're getting so much more. See, there's that. The power really builds after about 6,500 RPM. You really get that surge, and so you got to keep it on the boil unless you get this thing tuned and flashed and get that a little more sorted. So I think the Ninja 500 has more linear and predictable power. This kind of has a little bit of a poke, like an old two-stroke or something. Not quite as significant, obviously, but maybe that's a nod back to the old RS250s. Slipper clutch doing nice there. Woo, slippery. Kick to the inside here. Having some fun with the bike. Yeah, it's super enjoyable. It's super fun to ride. And that's its trump card, really. That's the reason that it is the king of the category, in my opinion. It is just so playful, so fun to ride, has such a real sport bike flavor and character about it that I don't really care. I don't care that the other one is more usable, has better creature comforts, whatever. Like, this thing is awesome. This is just an awesome little motorcycle. And I would definitely get this one. All right, 0 to 60 test. We did it on the Ninja 500. We're gonna do it here on the 457 best we can, and we'll be able to ascertain which one is faster up to 60. Got nobody coming back the other way. You know, I think the 500's a little faster, honestly. This thing is geared a little tighter, such that you have to shift, I think, one more time to get to 60 than you would on the 500. And the power band here, although it says it can rev to a little above 10,000, you get RPM cut at about 9.5. It doesn't let you really go much further than that. And so you have to shift very precisely right at around 92 and keep it in that power and shift it right where it counts. Boy, what a great bike. What a fun, great frickin' motorcycle that this is. And I love how it looks. I love that it has that sophisticated big bike presence and sound, all for roughly the same price as the Ninja. So let's get back in the shop and determine who our winner of this comparison is and who should buy which motorcycle.
So which of these two beginner sport bikes should you get? Well, I think it really depends on what you're looking for. The Ninja 500 SE is a fantastic all-rounder option. It's gonna fit a wide variety of riders, different sizes, different skill sets. It's got a lot to offer for a lot of people. The new 451cc engine gives just that little bit extra torque, a little bit extra highway legs, the windshield, the USB. A lot of the features on this motorcycle are highly optimized for all day, all around kind of riding, and I can really respect that. So if you're looking for something reliable, all-rounder, great on gas economy, all that good stuff, just like a known quantity option, the Ninja 500 SE is gonna do it for you. I did find that after riding the RS457, the Ninja 500 did feel a little pedestrian. And that's really where I think the RS457 comes in. If you want something fun, peppy, exciting, that you can really grow your skill sets into, take to the track and have a great time with, the RS457 provides ridiculous amounts of smiles per miles. It's got a super engaging ride, a very willing frame, a playful, fun 270-degree crank engine. It really is a really fun motorcycle. But it is a little more narrowly focused, right? It is a sport bike through and through. It's not an all-rounder. It's not designed to be comfortable for the all-day ride, even though it kind of is. Some of the tech features on the RS457 do get in its own way a little bit. You don't need the ride modes. It does have kind of a kinked power band with a bit of a dip in the middle. The Ninja 500 has a more linear motor, and so the RS457 is a more specialized machine. And so if you want something like that, then that's gonna be your choice over there. If it were my own money, having owned many Ninja 400s, I would without a doubt pick up an RS457. It was way more fun to ride, way more emotional, way more interesting, and I just felt the vibe of the bike fit me a little better. But the Ninja 500 SE is a fantastic motorcycle, very well executed. The Japanese have been building these kinds of motorcycles for a very long time, and you can really tell that it's a refinement and evolution on a tried and true platform. The RS457 was a little bit more willing, more fun, more playful, but ultimately, if you want something rock solid reliable and you just want a known quantity, the 500 is gonna be the way to go. I hope today's video helped you make the choice. No matter which one of these bikes you pick, you're gonna have a good time on two wheels if it's your first motorcycle. Don't overthink the choice too much. If you like one bike, just get that bike. If you like another bike, just get that bike too. Life is long. You're probably gonna own many different motorcycles, so don't get too hung up and go have a good time on two wheels. Thanks so much for watching today's video. Remember that RS457 is a giveaway bike wrapping up very soon, and this Ninja 500 perhaps will be a giveaway bike in the future. We'll catch you guys in the next one. See you later. Well, you made it to the end of the video. And this RS457, what's that? It wants me to tell you to keep watching Yami Noob. Click that video right over here and keep gathering all the motorcycle knowledge that you need to become the best rider you can possibly be. But it also wants me to tell you to go to yaminoob.com and get signed up to win this amazing motorcycle. So do that and keep watching the show.